By the way, welcome to video lecture, I guess number 11.
Number
10.5.
10.5.
Alright, video lecture 10 and a half. So it's kind of a sandwich in between video lectures 10 and 11. And this is a little different, so we're going to use the whiteboard to kind of talk it through rather than PowerPoint. And what we're going to be talking about is blood typing today. And we're going to use blood types as an example of some genetics that are based off of two things. One, more than two alleles, and two, about a pattern of inheritance called codominance. So normally we would do two alleles, right? Like blue or brown eyes, black or white fur. We kind of just have like two alleles. In this situation, blood types, you guys probably know there's actually three possible alleles. And so when we talk about blood types, we have to keep that in mind. You've got your A, B, and then O. You've probably heard of these as your blood types before, right? You could be A, you could be B, you could be O.
What's your blood type, Mr. Jones?
I'm O positive, which is the most common.
Wow.
I think like 35% of all people in the US are O positive. It's the most common. But as far as the genetics here, you're going to be filling out a table that looks like this. You can find it at the bottom of your skeleton notes as we go through the video lecture. So these are the first three. Go ahead and fill in the other three based off the possible combinations that you could imagine, right? Because remember, each person needs two alleles, and you get two of any of these three depending on which ones you get from your parents. These are all the possible alleles combinations you could have, and they are our genotypes. So these alleles represent different proteins that exist on your red blood cells. So your blood type is based off of the kinds of proteins that your red blood cells are making. So Mr. H will show us a little bit about...
Yeah, and there is room actually on your skeleton notes, so what I'm about to draw, I'd like for you to draw as well. Okay, I'm going to use red. So whenever you see this, RBC, red blood cell, so this is going to be our A. Alright, this is going to be our B. This is going to be our AB. And then this last one that I'm stretching for is going to be our O. So these are our four different phenotypes. So what I want you to know about is there's something called an antigen. So an antigen would be like a protein that's basically kind of almost like a self-identifier. So it's sticking out of that red blood cell kind of being like, hey, this is what I am. So, and I'm just making up these shapes. We can say that one is an A antigen. So A blood type has A antigen. B blood type will have a B antigen. So what do you think AB has?
Both.
Both. So we have an A, and then we have a B, and then here's kind of a tricky question. What do you think O has? Senor Jones.
So I don't know, did we mention that the relationship between these three alleles? We might have forgot to mention that at the top. So
yeah,
we did forget to mention, so this, so A and B, as we see here, are codominant because they both express the antigens.
right, that's right.
But we forgot to mention O. O is actually recessive
That's right.
to both A and B. So if O is recessive to A and B, it's not going to really show up the way you would expect it to show up. So it's a little bit of a trick question.
Yeah.
But what would it look like?
So, and remember too, adding to what Mr. Jones is saying, that when you have a situation where it's codominant, both of those are going to show. So in this situation, as Mr. Jones mentioned, A and B are codominant to each other, so it's possible for both of them to actually show up, but also, as he mentioned, O is going to be recessive to them. So in a situation like this, what's really interesting about O, which is Mr. Jones's blood type, is that there's actually no antigen sticking out of that red blood cell. So it basically looks just like that. There's nothing different about it.
Yeah. So those are your four blood types and what they look like. So we can actually fill in some more of this chart now. So let's quickly do that. So look down at your chart, and we can actually fill out the next two rows here, the next two columns. So when we drew these, we kind of showed the different phenotypes. But remember, if your genotype is 2 A's, then your blood type, the phenotype there is, you have blood type A. AO, because O is recessive, blood type A. If you have A and B, codominant, so your blood type is AB, because they're codominant. They both show up in the phenotype. Right? So we can see here, AB codominant, we have 2 antigens. If you're BB, then you are phenotype B. If you're BO, you're also B, because it's recessive. If you're OO, if you have 2 recessive alleles, your blood type is just O. Right? And then you can fill out your antigen column as well, based off of the drawings that you made. So any blood type that you see that's A, it has the A antigen. Blood type AB has both antigens. Now I'm not going to write AB, I'm going to write A plus B. Okay. So A and B. For B, we know it has the B antigen and the B antigen. If your blood type is O, you have no antigens. So we'll just write none. So that's the idea between the genotype, phenotype, and antigen. So hopefully that makes some sense. You notice that there's one last column in our first table that we need to fill out about antibodies.
That's right. All right. So let's go back to our red blood cells. So I'll use a different color for this one now. So as Mr. Jones mentioned, these antigens basically are going to tell you what the red blood cell is. However, there's something else that's called antibodies. You could separate your red blood cells from antibodies, so keep that in mind as we go through examples in the future with blood typing. So, antibodies.
So should they be drawing these into their diagram? Or?
Yes, please. Thank you for mentioning that. So hopefully you've drawn this already. If not, go ahead and pause real quick and draw that. If you've already done it, keep going. So now let's talk about the antibodies. So, if you have blood type A, you're going to sort of have the opposite of that, which in this case is antibody B.
So, what do antibodies do?
Good question. So, antibody B. Notice how I drew it the same shape, sort of, as antigen B. So if an antibody and an antigen kind of click onto each other, it's not good news. Basically, if that happens, you're getting clotting, and in a worst case situation, your body goes into shock and you die.
So these antibodies are part of our immune system, right?
Yes.
And so each antibody is very specifically shaped to match a certain antigen, right? So the idea is like, it's a good thing to have antibodies to fight off foreign invaders like viruses or bacteria.
For sure.
But obviously, if we have red blood cells that have an antigen on them, we also don't want to be making the same antibodies, because then we would be attacking ourselves.
That's right. And so
we got to figure out what antibodies people make if they have certain blood types.
that's right. So for example, Mr. Jones mentioned that he's O positive.
Yeah.
I am B positive. So once I teach you this, I want you to figure out, can I give blood to Mr. Jones, or can Mr. Jones give blood to me?
Yep.
Alright, so our A blood cell has B antibody. Our B blood cell is going to have an A antibody. Notice how I drew it in a shape where this and that would kind of click onto each other if they met. Okay? So the question is, what do you think AB has? If it had an A antibody or B antibody, it wouldn't be good news, right? You don't want to carry the antibody that's going to basically clot your own blood. So blood type AB actually does not have any antibodies. No antibodies. And hopefully that serves as a hint for you to know what O has. So O doesn't have any antigens. Which antibody or antibodies do you think it has? Got A and B.
It's got both. Cool. So let's fill in our table here so that we can keep moving on. So if your blood type is A, you will have the B antibodies. If your blood type, so for both genotypes, our blood type is A antigen, B antibody. Notice that it's the opposite. If my blood type is AB, I have both antigens, so I cannot have any antibodies related to A and B. Now, I have other antibodies for all sorts of other things, but as far as blood type antibodies go, I don't have any for my blood type. If I have blood type B, I'm going to have like A antibodies, just like we drew over here. And finally, if I'm O, I'm going to have A and B antibodies. So that's what your table should look like when you've completed it on the front page. Alright, so you should be able to complete all of the front page of your skeleton notes at this point. So if you flip it over to the back page, there's a little section there for number 5 where it talks about blood transfusions. So it's asking what kind of blood can each of these people receive. So kind of getting at the question that you were asking just a second ago. So I would like you to pause the video there and see if you can complete part 5 of your skeleton notes. What can each of those type of people receive? Remember, keep in mind that if I'm blood type O, I am producing and I'm making antibodies to fight off A and B blood. Right? So so I have these antibodies that are really good at attacking the A antigen, and this is really good at attacking the B antigen. So that tells you something about what I can receive as far as blood. Because I have things that will attack certain blood types.
That's right.
So your job now is to sort of figure out that through number 5. So it turns out that the positive and negative part of a blood type is related to something called an RH factor. And it's basically just another gene that has 2 alleles. It has the positive and it has the negative. So it's kind of like a regular genetics problem. It's a complete dominant situation. It's not like the codominance of the A, B, and the O. This is just regular dominance. So when we look at the table, I give you the middle aisle, or the middle row rather, where it says RH plus RH minus genotype. That gives your blood type an RH positive because it's positive is dominant over negative.
By the way, the RH comes from rhesus monkeys. And that's basically a research that was done to kind of figure out positive, negative, and because it was done on rhesus monkeys, they stuck with RH or D.
Yeah. So the RH factor is this idea of positive and negative, and the antigen that will show up is something called the D antigen. So do you want to draw that on our blood cells just to complete that diagram? So you could flip it over probably back to your diagram to complete this.
So let's say that this first one is A positive. By the way, please stay away from saying A plus or A minus because these aren't grades, they're blood types. So A positive is going to have, I didn't draw that very well, it's going to have a D antigen. Okay? Let's say this one is B negative. Is it going to have a D antigen? Nope, it is not. However, it is going to have a D antibody. This next one, let's just call it AB positive. What we'll see is it has a D antigen, and it continues to not have any antibodies. This is a very sort of a unique kind of special case where you have all available antigens and no antibodies. And then here we can do Mr. Jones's O positive. So this one would finally have an antigen on it, but it wouldn't have that antibody. So if it has the antigen, it will not have the antibody. That's kind of a rule of thumb thing to remember.
Yep, can't have both. So should this have the, so the only one that has the antibody is a negative blood type.
A negative blood type.
So let's just quickly fill out our table. So we know that it's possible to be RH plus, RH minus. The other possibilities are obviously plus, plus, which gives us a positive phenotype. And the antigen there would still be the D antigen. And then last possibility is to have 2 negatives, which gives us a blood type that's negative. Antigen, none. So it does not have the D antigen. Antibodies is going to be the opposite of the antigen. So if I have the D antigen, I cannot have the D antibody. So both of these should be none. Here, I have the D antibody. Okay, so basically, you've got two different situations. You've got A, B, and O, which is one sort of gene that codes for 3 possible alleles. And then you have the plus and minus, which is another gene. Together gives you your full blood type. Right?
That's right. So this is actually a good time for us to be able to figure out, can we give each other blood? Okay?
That's true.
So let's do a quick little example. So Mr. Jones, you said you are
I'm O positive.
O positive. So the question is, can you give me blood? So the way that I do this is actually draw out the whole thing because I don't want to make mistakes. So here's my O positive. Notice how I only drew the D antigen. It doesn't have the A and the B. It's just O. So what antibodies will I have? In this situation, it doesn't matter. Because when someone's giving blood, you can actually separate the antibodies from the actual like red blood cells.
So it's only, so the antibodies are only important in the receiver, or the recipient.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, so when I give my blood to you, I'm not giving you my antibodies.
Correct.
I'm just giving you my blood cells.
Exactly. So if Mr. Jones had antibodies here, and you can determine whether he does or not, I wouldn't be getting those anyway. Alright? So, my blood, so I'm going to be B positive, so I'm going to have B, and I'm going to have a D. Do I have any antibodies? I have an A antibody. So the question is, when this blood comes into contact with my antibodies, do I have an antibody that's a perfect match for one of his antigens? And it looks like I don't. So this is actually doable.
Give that a check. I can give you my blood.
Can I give you blood though? That's the question.
So if we want to go the other way, we have to know what antigens I have. So what do I have for
right.
antigens? Or sorry, what antibodies do I have?
Antibodies. So you are going to have A,
Yep.
and you are going to have B.
I have A and B antibodies.
Alright, so if I'm giving you blood now, so our arrow is going the other way.
Switch it up.
Yep. And now remember, my antibodies don't matter anymore.
Right, so you're just giving me your blood cells.
So do you have an antibody that's going to attach to one of my antigens and cause clotting?
Oh yeah.
Yep. This B, that B. Mr. Jones, I am sorry, but I cannot give you blood.
This reminds me of our friendship in a way.
It kind of is.
I can give to you,
Yes.
but
I
you
hardly
cannot
give
give to
back.
me.
That's correct. It's just a lifestyle thing.
That's actually not very true. I think we have a mutualistic
We do,
relationship.
yeah. This is definitely just a blood thing.
Yeah.
Alright? And then the last thing I just wanted to go over real quick, I just wanted to teach you how to do a Punnett Square when it comes to blood. So for example, we talked about the genotype AA. The way you write it for Punnett Square is this AA. The proper way of writing it is actually like this, IAIA.
So what does the I stand for?
I don't actually know, to be honest with you.
Okay, but that's just the way we write it. So the
Yeah.
I, so that means I have one A allele
Yeah.
on my as one copy, and my other copy is another A allele.
That's
Okay.
right. So if someone's like AB, right, it's going to be IA, IB,
Okay.
right? So we'll stay away from the sort of positive, negative right now. We'll just, let's say someone who is blood type, let's say
you and I try to have a child
okay,
with our
I like
blood
that,
types.
I like that. Alright, so you are what, O positive?
I'm O positive, but
So
we're
we'll
going to
keep the
ignore
positives.
those. Okay.
Exactly.
We're going to ignore the positive and negatives.
So if that's your phenotype, what would your genotype be?
Would I write IOIO?
Good question. You would actually not write the O's. You
I would
just
not
write
write the
I's.
O's,
Yeah,
just
you
the
just
I's.
have two I's.
Okay, so
Right?
okay.
So I'm going to be B, because remember we're keeping away the positives and the negatives right now. So if I'm B, what am I?
IB.
Couple
How do I
different
know?
questions. Exactly.
Are you IBI or IB?
The only way to know is by knowing what my parents had, right?
Okay.
So I don't technically know which one I am, so we can just kind of choose one.
Okay.
But let's go over both options. So I could be IB. This would make me homozygous. Or I could be IBI, which is basically like saying BO.
Right. Okay.
It's kind of weird, Alright, so I could be IBI or IBIB. In this situation, let's just say that I'm heterozygous. Let's go ahead and do this Punnett Square.
Okay.
Alright.
Do a little cross
Do a
action.
little cross action. Alright, so let's say Mr. Jones goes here. So these are all the possibilities. I. And we'll go with IBI for me. So this is the heterozygous one. So I'll go IBI. And then let's bring them together. We go IBI in this box. Notice I brought those together. Then we go II there, IBI here, and II there. Okay? So,
Well, we have one thing that's not doesn't look quite right to me.
what did I do? What did I do? Did I make a mistake?
This box.
That box. What's wrong with it, Mr. Jones?
I think it should be II. 'Cause you have an I
Right.
and I.
Anybody catch that?
Gotta keep you on your toes.
Got me toes. All right. Mistakes anywhere else?
Yes.
Where else?
Right here.
What's the problem?
You forgot the B.
You're right. IBI. So, what do these give me? What phenotype do these give me? Right? Because that's my genotype.
Yeah. So your phenotype would be B,
Mr. Jones, how come it can't be BO?
because that's a genotype.
That's a genotype. So really, the phenotype here will be B.
Yeah.
What about these?
Give you O.
Why can't it be OO?
This is a genotype.
Yep, so this is actually O. So if we had kids, there'd be a 50% chance that our kids would have phenotype B or phenotype O.
Yeah.
Alright,
Cool. I think that's it.
I think that's it. Thanks for watching.
If you have any questions, let us know.
Alright, bye guys.
Alright.
Phenotypes here, basically O. Phenotype here is going to be O. Phenotype here is going to be B. Phenotype here is going to be B. Good idea. Let's do that part again.
You did.
Let's
You did right move there.